with the historian Irad Malkin, professor of ancient Greek history, Tel Aviv University, visiting professor class at Oxford University, co-founder and editor of the Mediterranean Historical Review, recently a new foreign member of the Academy of Athens. Malkin has devoted many studies to Ithaca, including the very successful book, The Returns of Odysseus, and also he has returned to Ithaca, and now is here with us. Well, how did the title of the book come about? Returns, plural, because Odysseus is the one who always thinks about returning. Is this one of the many meanings?
Well, coming here, I'm following the concept of nostos in Greek. And what's fascinating, this is what is typical of the travels of Odysseus. I mean, Greeks worshipped this hero who broke new ground, who found new paths across the sea. But basically what he wanted was just to come back home. So he was the explorer malgré lui, even though he didn't want to be such. Now, nostos in ancient Greek has the same root as nous, which is mind. So nostos is not just a return, which I'm doing today, returning to Ithaca. Nostos is also traveling back in your memory. Because what do we do when we remember? We travel back, we go back, we do a nostos. And the greatest threat Odysseus has to face in the Odyssey is not death, it's forgetfulness. The threat of the Siren's song is forgetting his nostos. And that is the biggest threat, because if you lose your nostos, you also lose your mind, basically, in a very literal sense. So I think the reason why Odysseus, unlike any other mythological hero, is so prominent in at least Western civilization, with Nikos Kazantzakis writing a sequel, with James Joyce writing Ulysses, the very concept of Odysseus and his return, I think that very kind of relations is very ancient too. And this is what we see at Polis Cave. I mean, for me the fascinating thing is you have 200 years before Greeks even could write an alphabet. I mean, by that time they will have forgotten Mycenaean writing. Okay? So they adopted the alphabet from the Arameans and the Phoenicians, apparently, we don't know exactly, but clearly it's a Semitic alphabet, and which is, nobody has improved on it ever since until today. It's so concise and everything. And this is when it was possible to write down the Odyssey, which until then, and scholars have been arguing about how old is Homer, how old are those stories? And here you see a cave in Ithaca, with tripods from the 10th and the 9th centuries BC. Greeks traveling there. I assumed it was the dedications to Odysseus. It wasn't clear, because the single inscription that we have, which is also quoted in the statue in Stavros, Eugen Odyssey, is from the Hellenistic period. So I had to build a case of probability, and it rests on the following arguments, which is very important. The tripods themselves are fantastically expensive, prestigious objects, beautifully done, as you see some images here in this museum. It was the most expensive dedication a Greek could have dedicated. You find such tripods where? In the fantasy of Homer, in the palace of Hephaestus, he has 30 tripods. You have tripods at Delphi, International Oracular Center. You have tripods at Olympia, International Athletic and Temple of Zeus. And you have tripods in a small little cave in Ithaca, which is impossible otherwise, unless it was really important to the people who dedicated it. It was significant, it was symbolic for them. And why would there be tripods in Ithaca, if not for Odysseus? So this is one argument. There are several others. I will not belabor everything. It's all in my book, The Returns of Odysseus. But the attitude of the ancients in general, not just Greeks, also Etruscans, and also many others who adopted Odysseus, these are attitudes, these are beliefs of people. These are acts of cult and worship. And these are historical facts. Yeah. Odysseus may be a figment of somebody's imagination, but frankly, literary persons have much more presence in our lives than somebody I met yesterday in a restaurant. Okay? That somebody may be a real person, flesh and blood, but he plays no role in my life. A hero of Nostos, such as Odysseus, must have played on some chords, musical chords inside us that keep ringing whenever we hear the name.
Good. So, with your global vision as a historian, you have integrated archaeological sources with literary, ethnographic, anthropological, sociological sources, and you have developed this fascinating image of the Euboeans who passed through here, stop at the cave of Poly, make offering to the god before making the journey westward. Is that so?
It's very much so. Moreover, even for practical reasons, in the 7th century, Corinth cut the channel at Lefkada. Okay? Before that, it was very dangerous to travel on those waters. People from Epirus would come. So the real way up north was only between Ithaca and Kefalonia. The only bay where you can find shelter at this side of Ithaca, unlike Frikes, Kionin, or everything else on the other side, is here, is Polis Bay. So it was clearly for navigators.
And not Piscardo?
No. It was the very dangerous waters, this side of Ithaca. Maybe not always dangerous, but certainly in order to go up north, you really had to. But this is a straight way through the Ithaca-Kefalonia channel, and this is the only place where you might moor a ship. And this is where, according to my reconstructions, ancient Greek merchants and others, either on the way out towards the unknown and the north to sell and practice, or, which seems more likely even, when they're coming back, they're giving a thanks of dedication to Odysseus because of that hero. So, going out into the world, you want the protection of the hero who has been everywhere. Coming back, you're thankful to this hero who broke new horizons.
Yes. And let's talk about Ithaca again. Ithaca is both periphery and center. It is very peripheral to the Mycenaean world, yet it is at the center of the routes to the west. You wrote that Ithaca's role in the sea on the road to the west is to be considered strategic in proto-colonial times. Do you still think so?
Oh, I absolutely agree, and I think that some of the findings of Catherine Morgan and also that aspect are supported by her work, because you get a sense that people at Ithaca, they were even producing Corinthian pottery right here, because you see it from the clay itself. So the question of center and periphery is very interesting. The only fixed points on this globe are the North Pole and the South Pole. Any other point on the globe, you can say it's the center, because the globe is round, right? So in that sense, Ithaca is peripheral, as Telemachos says explicitly in the Odyssey. It gives an impression that we are really on the corner of the known world or something. On the other hand, in terms of the practice of the maritime spaces, Ithaca is pretty central, especially at a time when you don't always Greeks are not always just looking for other Greeks. They're looking for Epiros, they're looking for Italians, they're looking for Etruscans. And so the route up north via Ithaca, a small island, not very fertile, no place for horses, says Telemachos in the Odyssey, becomes a central point, a focal point. It's not Corinth, okay? It's not a great producer, it's not a great merchant as such, but it's a mediating point, and mediating points are always central.
You deal with the ancient Mediterranean, so let's talk about the traces of Odysseus in the west, scattered around the Mediterranean basin from Gibraltar to Tunis and Italy. Do you have any news, new archaeological digs that I don't know?
The point is, I think, goes far deeper. The myths of the Nostos, not just that of Odysseus, also Philoctetes, Diomedes, and others.
Yeah,
it was like the Trojan War was a point of convergence, okay? All the Greeks from all over the world came to Troy and did whatever they did. But Greece was never a country in antiquity. There were about 1,035 independent Greek city-states in around 400 BC. So it's a world of points and dots.
Yeah.
The Nostoi explain this kind of world. I said the Nostoi are like a big bang suddenly spreading over the Mediterranean.
I like this in your book, a big bang.
And the big bang, and the Odysseus is the biggest of the bangs. Right? Now, for hundreds of years later, the Trojan myth, it's like you throw a stone into a pond and the waves keep spreading out. That's why the capital of Portugal is called after Odysseus.
Yes.
Lisbon is
Lisbona.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people don't, even Portuguese don't always remember that. But the notion that the heroes of the Trojan War are responsible for the Britons in 632 AD. A Frankish king, Dagobertius, publishes an edict. I am a proud descendant of Priam, king of Troy. Now he was German. But so, and Odysseus, more than any others, more or less, for example, according to Hellanicus, 5th century historian, Odysseus came together with Aeneas and founded the city of Rome. According to Etruscan legend, or historical reconstructions, Odysseus led the Etruscan migration to Cortona in Italy. And the earliest inscriptions in Etruscan that mention Odysseus, Utusde in Etruscan, clearly, they clearly adopted it from the earliest Greeks who came to Italy. In Corinthian dialect, it's Ulixes. In Euboean dialect, it's Odysseus. There are 27 different ways to say the name of Odysseus in ancient Greek.
I have this question.
Okay.
I often ask my interviews about the end of Ulysses. Where did he die? In Cortona? In Italy? In Itaca?
That's quite curious, because many heroes have tombs to worship. The tomb is a point of contact in ancient Greek worship with a chthonian world, with the world under the earth. But Odysseus is so international in some sense that you don't want to have a tomb. And therefore the relationship with the pan-Mediterranean hero which he became, we have to realize one thing. We're not talking about Christianity or Judaism or Islam. These are not exclusive religions. They're not religions that say, mine is the truth and yours is a lie. No. For the Etruscans, he was an Etruscan hero. But it's not a zero-sum game, on the contrary. It's the same hero in different languages. And that's why he could become so powerful. The notion that the Romans were founded by Odysseus, the Romans didn't like. Later on, they threw out Odysseus and kept only Aeneas.
Yeah.
Unlike the Greek tradition. So people, again, need to take account of that. So right here in Ithaca, where I'm sitting now, talking to you, in this museum, we're talking about a palimpsest, layers and layers and layers of attitudes towards Odysseus. There must be a reason why for 3,000 years we keep coming back to this hero, more than anyone else. And that is the point where I feel such excitement. When I see the cave of Polis, when I see the tripods, when I see the dedications.
Now we can see nothing.
Yeah. When you see the coins of this of Ithaca from the 4th century, with the head of Athena on one side and on the obverse you have Odysseus. you realize what a focal point a mythological hero, after all, could be for real people. And this is the point of contact between myth and reality indicates that reality cannot exist without the myth.
To conclude, the Museum of the Sea from Odysseus to Omero does not only make use of archaeological finds. The few that are there are those left by fishermen in front of the museum door, finding from different periods that testified to an operational continuity of the port of Poli up to the Byzantine period and behind. But for us, all disciplines, history, philosophy, literature, archaeology, ethnography, anthropology, are tools that converge in a language aimed at multimedia communication. What do you think of this museum approach?
Well, I think it's a wonderful approach because every generation or every epoch searches for its own modes of expression. In that sense, during the Dark Ages, the mode of expression was oral poetry. In the centuries that followed, you find it in literature. We know that Greek authors wrote plays about Odysseus. We don't have them, sadly, but they did exist. So the modes of expression, if it's oral poetry, epic poetry, in the archaic period, if it's drama in the classical period, if these are kind of novels in late Hellenistic and Roman periods, if these are continuations, so-called, of, like I mentioned before, of Kazantzakis, for example.
Yes, Kazantzakis.
Exactly, and we have American authors following that. Derek Walcott, for example, a Black Caribbean. Omero. You have Ismail Kadare in Albania writing Histoire d'Ash, namely about Histoire d'Homère, of Homer's. So this museum fits precisely a new mode of expression, following what is apt for our times, namely the visual, namely the explanatory, namely the ability to show in a small place such a concentration of different angles of looking at Odysseus, from the purely archaeological to the mythical story.
Thank you so much for your contribution to the American Sea Museum, and I would like to consider this day as a lucky day for the museum and you as our godfather.
Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.